Hey Michigan, y'all got some unsettling stuff going on over there. Goblins and ghosts, demons and dogmen, melonheads and missing ships. And today I'm gonna be talking about all of it, so get excited. All right, we're gonna start things off with what is known as the Paulding Light, or the Dog Medow Lights to locals. So this is a strange, unexplained light that locals will observe all the time. There's a freaky ghost story connected to it as well, and we'll get to that, but let me just stress that these lights aren't just something people talk about. There's plenty of video of the phenomenon. So yeah, look at that. It's kind of wild. This video here was posted by Johnny Shocker. In the description, he talks about how he'd seen the light on more than one occasion and that it would float towards him, like floating in midair, then it would vanish, only to reappear and repeat the same process. So there's a lot of local folklore surrounding this mysterious light. Probably the most well-known is the tale of the railroad brakeman. At one time there were railroad tracks in the area, and one chilly night the brakeman, with lantern in hand, spotted an oncoming train. But there were railway cars stopped on the tracks. He tried desperately to signal to the train, waving his lantern back and forth, but unfortunately he didn't get out of the way on time before being bulldozed by the train, which is kind of his fault. Like, you see the train coming from that far away and you can't just like hop out of the way. I know you're doing your job, but at some point you gotta put yourself first, you know? Alright, couldn't do this list without talking about the Michigan Triangle. Just like the infamous Bermuda Triangle, this is a section of Lake Michigan where all sorts of strange phenomena have taken place. Some are just stories, but there are very real occurrences as well. Missing planes, ships, people. There have also been a number of reported UFO sightings in this triangular section of the lake. The most famous ships to disappear in the area include the Lake Griffin, which vanished into thin air, last seen on September 18th of 1679. The wreckage was never found. The most famous incident involving a plane is the Flight 2501 incident. This was a flight carrying 55 passengers and 3 crew, which vanished during its flight on June 23rd of 1950 while flying over Lake Michigan. Then there's the story of Stephen Kubacki. He was a college student on a skiing trip who went missing in 1978. A massive search was launched, but he was nowhere to be found. A little over a whole year went by, and then out of the blue, the guy just shows up again. Even stranger, he had no memory of the time that had passed. Alright, we got some very interesting Bigfoot footage for you next. Yes, there have been a number of Bigfoot sightings in Michigan, and this one happened to be captured on camera by a man named Eddie V, who sent the footage to the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch organization. Alright, so I'd actually never seen this footage before, which I'm kind of surprised by, because it's pretty cool footage. The thing isn't obscured by trees, the camera's not shaky, you very clearly see something walking across the river, and to me, it doesn't look like a bear. It kind of looks like it's carrying something too. Some people say it could be a deer, or maybe a baby Sasquatch, if this is indeed a Sasquatch. I mean, could it be a dude in a suit? That's always a possibility, but I don't know. What do you all think of this one? It's a cool video to me. It kind of looks like, almost like it doesn't even have fur or something. It's, I don't know, strange. Next up, we have the urban legend of Nain Rouge, aka the demon of the strait. So this kind of falls into the cryptid category as well as folklore, which I always go nuts for. I love hearing about weird creatures that I've never heard of before. Nain Rouge is kind of similar to Mothman in that it seems to show up right before disaster strikes, almost like a harbinger of doom. But this thing isn't a giant moth creature. It's more like your classic red devilish kind of monster, or a hobgoblin as it's sometimes described. This red menace hails from Detroit specifically, and is said to have appeared before major events like the Detroit riots in 1967 and the Battle of Bloody Run in 1763. The first major appearance of the creature is said to have been before Detroit's very own founder, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac. The story goes that he'd seen a fortune teller who told him that he was to respect and appease this goblin-like creature, so he smacked it with his cane and told it to get out of his way. Then his political career took a nosedive, really didn't go so well. He was eventually banished from the city of Detroit, he was imprisoned for a time, lost all his money. Just don't be mean to the goblin monster, I guess. Next on the list, we have Melonheads. The Melonheads. I talked about these bulbous weirdos during one of my many Ohio urban legend slash cryptid videos. I was glad to get to talk about my little bobble-headed friends again on this list, but it turns out Michigan's brand of Melonheads are a little more violent than the Ohio ones. Not something I'm assuming, it's just what I've read. Beginning sometime in the 1950s, tales of these strange, misshapen creatures began to spread around the city of Saugatuck. The story goes that the Melonheads were youngsters suffering from hydrocephalus. They were being treated by a rather cruel doctor, and one day they rebelled against their mad doctor, taking his life before eating his remains. And they scuttled off into the forest, where they began living their new life, retreating in tunnels and caves under the city, occasionally coming out to terrorize innocent civilians. Hell's Bridge. So this bridge in Rockford is said to be haunted by demons and ghosts. Double whammy, demons and ghosts. I gotta say, probably best not to go to this bridge. So the tale goes that in the late 1800s, a number of youngsters were going missing in the town. And one night, the townsfolk decided that it might be time to, look for them. So they embarked on a massive search. They left the remaining young ones in town with an old man named Elias Frisk to watch over them while the adults were gone. Well, Frisk was not the innocent, weak old man that he pretended to be. He led the young girls and boys out into the woods, where he eventually revealed to them the location of all their missing little friends. He then took each of their lives one by one before dumping them into the Rogue River. When the townspeople arrived back in town, they found Fisk all alone, muttering to himself in an eerie tone. He was covered in blood and kept repeating the words, "The devil made me do it." Fisk was hanged from the Rockford Bridge, now haunted by the spirits of his victims and the demons that had possessed him. Alright, back to cryptids now with the Torch Lake Monster. In Antrim County, there is a tale of a creature said to stalk the waters of Michigan's longest and deepest inland lake, Torch Lake. Tales of this lake creature are most often told at night around Camp Hiawatha. The creature is also referred to as the Sea Panther, as it has the body of a lizard and the head of a cat, with slimy green skin and two different colored eyes, one blue and one brown. It's said that the creature will rise up from the lake at night to attack unsuspecting fishermen or campers. At best, it'll just chase you off and scare you away. If you're not so lucky though, it may drag you into the depths of the lake, never to be seen again. Next up is the Dogman. Werewolves gotta be my favorite mythological creature, so Dogman sightings get me real excited. The Dogman is a creature said to be, as the name suggests, a part man, part dog creature. It stands about 7 feet tall. What's extra creepy about this creature is that it's said to have a very unnatural howl. It doesn't sound like a wolf or even your classic werewolf. It sounds more like a man's scream, and something about that just sends a shiver up my spine. Monstrous creatures making human-like sounds just gives them this kind of uncanny valley sort of vibe. Very off-putting. There have been apparent Dogman sightings reported ever since 1887, where one witness supposedly died of fright after encountering the creature. There's also another famous story in the 60s where a bunch of hippies were in a van and they saw it peering into their window, though I wouldn't really trust what hippies said, especially in the 60s, because, they were on a lot of stuff, but who knows. Second to last on the list are the singing sands of Abete Gris. The sands of these beautiful beaches in the northern Upper Peninsula are said to sing. And actually, they're not just said to, they really do. When you rub your hands through the sand, it makes this high-pitched whooshing kind of sound, which is not actually a sound you'll get on every beach. So the legend goes that a long time ago, a Native American woman lost her lover in the waters of Lake Superior. She spent countless days returning to the beach, crying out and singing for him in a desperate hope that he would one day find his way back to her. Her cries are said to be heard in the very sand itself to this day. And what makes the singing sand even stranger is that the legend goes if you remove the sand from the beach, take it somewhere else, try and make it sing, it no longer makes makes any noise. Finally though, we have the old Presque Lighthouse. Nothing more classic than a good old-fashioned lighthouse ghost story. This lighthouse was erected in 1840, but it wasn't in operation for very long. Less than 30 years later, it had fallen into disrepair and was replaced by another lighthouse a little farther up north. In 1977, it became a museum, owned and operated by George and Lorraine Paris. Now, all the wiring had been removed. The lighthouse was no longer operational, but in 1992, just a year after George had passed away, a number of people, from pilots to sailors, had reported seeing a distinct glow coming from the old lighthouse. And passersby have told stories of spotting a mysterious figure lurking about the lighthouse, only to vanish into thin air. Many locals believe the ghost of George Paris still visits his beloved lighthouse from beyond the grave. With all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.